is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Robert Walton has been jet-setting in recent weeks in Singapore for the YYY Awards and then back to London to host the inaugural Restaurant Association Awards.
Yep, and after many years in the industry, Robert also knows a thing or two about how to create the perfect Christmas. And it's all in the preparation. So we're going to be asking him about that as well. I'm delighted to say that the godfather of hospitality, Robert Walton, MBE, joins us now on the sofa.
Morning, Robert.
Robert,
Good
so
morning.
good to see you. And what a busy few weeks you have had. Yeah. Should we start with the YYY Awards? Because I think it's just wonderful who you celebrated at those awards.
So, the YYY, Young Chef, Young Waiter, Young Mixologist. And it's a competition that's created around the world. So people from all around the world can apply. So this year we had 9 countries, from India to the Caribbean, from the USA to Scotland and England. And so we had 27 young professionals. The average age was about 24.
Wow.
All coming to Singapore. So we flew everyone to Singapore. We create what I call the Olympic Village. We create a little village for them, and it's in a very cool spot with great bars. And then we have the competition. And this year, I can now announce, I was here just a few weeks ago before we had the competition, that the USA won, which was absolutely incredible. Thailand was second. And gorgeous Wales was third.
Yes.
Well done, Wales.
Well done, Wales.
We now expect to have a good meal. There's no reason why you shouldn't have good food. The key now is the service, because there's no reason why you don't have good service. And good service is not that difficult. Smile, to start with. It really isn't that difficult. It's called hospitable. We call the industry, or the sector we look after is the hospitality industry, which is all about being hospitable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out why this lovely lady is back on the dating scene, why Panama could soon be reduced to selling hats again, and why is mice and men no good for girls and boys. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I've got comedians Paul Cox and Nick Dixon taking you through Tuesday's top stories. This is Headliners. But before Tuesday's news, let's go one last time for tonight's headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Simon, thank you. These are your headlines at 11 o'clock. Sir Keir Starmer said he would be looking forward to a better, brighter future for every person in a Christmas message following a turbulent year for the UK. The Prime Minister said the season was a time to remember the importance of being there for one another, including in the more difficult times. He also expressed hope for peace, particularly in the Middle East, as the birthplace of the Christmas story, amid spiralling conflict across the region. The message comes after a challenging first 5 months in office for the Labour government and against the backdrop of a flatlining economy and rising inflation. Now, some breaking news. US media is reporting that former US President Bill Clinton is in hospital in Washington, D.C. after developing a fever. It's understood the 78-year-old Mr. Clinton has been admitted to MedStar Georgetown University Hospital for testing and observation. We will bring you more as we get it. Now, US media is reporting a man who set a woman on fire at a New York City subway was in the US illegally from Guatemala. He was deported under Donald Trump, but got back into the country. Sebastian Zapata Khalil has been charged with murder and arson in the first degree after a woman burned to death on the train in Brooklyn this morning. It's understood the suspect was in the country illegally after previously being deported in June 2018. It's unclear how he got back into the US. Donald Trump's incoming border czar has hit out at New York's governor in the wake of the attack, accusing her of making the city a sanctuary for illegal immigrants. Germany's right-wing Alternative für Deutschland party has held a rally in front of Magdeburg Cathedral near the scene of the Christmas market attack that killed 5 people and injured over 200. The party leader called for a time of reckoning. Police arrested a 50-year-old Saudi doctor, identified by local media as Talib A, who had lived in Germany since 2006. AfD is the second strongest party at present, polling at about 18 to 20% of the vote, or 10 to 15 points behind the centre-right Christian Democratic Union and its Bavarian sister party. And King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade the speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and foster unity between faiths. The ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital and now hosts exhibitions and community events. This year's message comes as the King continues treatment following a cancer diagnosis earlier in 2023. And you can watch the King's speech on GBNews TV and radio on Christmas Day at 3 o'clock. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with three comedians. Before we dive in, let's take a quick look at what Paul and Nick will have to work with on Tuesday's front pages. First of all, we have the Daily Telegraph. Royal Mail accused of faking deliveries. The Times, fifth of the forces can't be relied on to fight. The Daily Mirror, honour the brave. The Daily Mail, King's message of national healing. The Sun, good health, Your Majesty. And finally, the Daily Star, the return of the boffins. They warn of a techno meltdown on festive big day. So let's have a closer look at the front pages. We'll start with Tuesday's Daily Mail, Paul.
Yes, Feliz Navidad, as they say in Scotland, Simon. King's message of national healing. The King's Christmas message tomorrow has been inspired by the way the UK pulled together after the Southport murder and riots. Now, I am starting to wonder if the King spent the summer outside of the UK or perhaps has just taken Keir Starmer's word for it, because I'm not sure there has been a great deal of national healing as a result of Southport and the tragic murders and, of course, the subsequent riots. But let's stick with the spirit of Christmas, shall we? It's a tradition that I'll make sure I'll be watching. Will either of you two be watching the Christmas speech?
We always used to watch it at home, and actually my dad always made a point of it, which I found tiresome at the time, but now look back on very fondly. But I don't think I can convincingly persuade my children to, assume the same role in the family. It's lost a little bit of its heft. The truth is, I think when it was the Queen, there was so much tradition, there was such a weight of tradition that it carried it forward like an ocean liner. But with the King, it's quite, he still feels like an innovation. And
yes, I hate to be rude, but it sort of seems like a series that's gone on. You know what I mean? Like I was following the prior season closely, and after that, I've lost track a little bit.
And the other thing, I genuinely don't know this. I mean, obviously, we all know when the King's speech or it used to be the Queen's speech in Parliament, that's all totally scripted for them by the government. With the Queen's speech, it always used to be just really quite a diary of what she'd been up to during the year. You'd see her meeting some school children and so on, and a couple of overseas dignitaries. This feels a little bit like he's been given some Labour Party propaganda.
Yeah, he's essentially, and I'm a big fan of the monarchy, but he is essentially the sort of social justice king, isn't he? And this story itself feels a little bit like this. I don't know the speech. I've just been presented with the front page today, this evening, sorry, and the fact that he's talking about the country coming together after the riots in particular.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, that didn't happen. I must have missed that.
No, it was the worst post-riot discord I can remember. I mean, much more so than after the 2011 riots. Then I think the country were generally relieved that had calmed down, and they were, broadly speaking, there was consensus that harsh penalties were appropriate.
I would say it was intra and post-riot discord. It was pretty much discord the whole time. There was no coming together. So how he gets that, what tone he strikes on that will be interesting.
Apparently the venue's...
No, I won't be watching.
There's some sort of Byzantine chapel in an otherwise demolished hospital or something.
He's chosen an ex-hospital chapel for the speech praising health workers and how a nation came together after the summer riots, says it. It doesn't say... I can't quite see where...
Apparently he's chosen a demolished hospital as a symbol of Britain and where we are now.
A demolished hospital which his ex-wife, Diana, opened the AIDS ward at.
Really?
The symbolism could hardly be more... It's more Byzantine than the architecture. Anyway, let's have a look at the Times, Nick.
Happy to, yeah. So they've got 1/5 of the forces can't be relied on to fight, and this is the state of our armed forces, which is somewhat disturbing. So more than 10,000 soldiers, sailors and aircrew are medically unfit, and 15,000 can only be deployed if the mission meets certain criteria, such as weather is not too hot or too cold, or they're not exposed to noise, which could be a massive... I mean, I'm a layman, but I hear that combat zones can get a little bit on the noisy side if you don't bring your earplugs.
Well, exactly. You can get these special earplugs now that they used to play in bands and things, so you don't get tinnitus.
Well, that's good.
Maybe they could equip them with those.
But then what if it's cold? They can't go.
Mufflers.
So we're in real trouble. Only 1/5 can actually... can fight, apparently. So 1/5 of regular armed forces cannot be relied on to fight. Only 55,000 fully deployable. So our army's in a big mess, and we're announcing it to the world on the front page of a newspaper, which I always think is tactically...
It doesn't seem to be a day go by where we're not openly advertising our...
weakness.
Our weaknesses, our invadability, if that's a word. But, you know, basically, if you're interested in anything we've got, now's the time.
Yeah, because obviously we've realised that what used to be regarded as our primary defence has been breached on a daily basis by dinghies as well, you know, without any...
That's such a good point. Our navy, we were the greatest navy.
I only say they cannot come by sea.
Yeah,
no longer.
And then more dangerous looks like our young drivers, more dangerous than our army, because 21% of male drivers aged 17 to 25 and 15% of female drivers are committing insurance fraud. They're on the road illegally, so... Be very careful.
I have some sympathy when you see how much, and I've got a 17-year-old son who luckily has failed the first part of his theory test, and I'm going to be breaking his fingers before he manages to get a licence. $2,500 for insurance for a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't need it.
You
it says here.
Exactly, you absolutely do. Well, the thing is, it's not necessarily a fraud if you put them on as a named driver. It's still expensive, you know, but
I mean, that
put them on
technique
as a
is
named
as old as the hills, isn't it?
I love the phrase, not necessarily fraud. You're on it.
Exactly. It's the same way that it's technically mortgage fraud if your parents lend you the deposit, right?
Is that right?
Well, it used to be.
I mean, that was never something that happened to me, but but I didn't realise that. So if you're lent the right. So if
I don't know what you're supposed to do. The only thing you can say is, to be honest, cars are probably not as necessary as they used to be in the old days.
Well,
give you that sort of burst of freedom. I don't know.
It depends where you live. If you live in a metropolitan city with good public transport, then you're in with a great chance of not needing a car. But if you live anywhere else...
That is true.
Yeah. There's one other story. It doesn't apply to you, Simon. It's humbling truth of how slow-thinking humans are. They didn't mean you, but the rest of us only think at 10 bits per second versus Wi-Fi, which thinks at 50 million bits per second. So it's got us licked on that one, apparently. And they're saying that Musk's idea of hooking us up to Neuralink will never work because we're just too dumb.
We're too dumb. It's like the $6 million man that everyone used to say, how can he pull up a car without his arms coming out of his sockets?
Although apparently they hooked this up to Andrew Doyle's brain, it just exploded, and he was quicker than the Wi-Fi.
I'm gonna get a Willow chip, you know, the Google quantum computer. That can do like the best supercomputer would take it 1 trillion years, and Willow can do it in 5 minutes.
I just thought that was the overhyped George Lucas film, Willow. That's my only reference.
The internet become the paradigm for quick thinking. I'm not sure that we should be comparing ourselves to, BT fibre.
Well, in all seriousness...
And we invented it. That's what really annoys me. We invented the speed. How did we do that?
As in we, as in humans, and also as in we, as in the Brits.
As in this table. Yeah. It came up with the internet.
Us three.
The weird thing is, and this is what AI was always struggling to keep up with, wasn't it? That the human brain is not like a computer. It doesn't do like a whole sequence of calculations. It's all the parallel calculations, like... You're listening to me, but you're also summing up my body language, and you know you're computing all the sort of olfactory information you're getting out of the corner of your eye. You're picking up on the fact that they've registered that camera 5 isn't working properly. You know, all this kind of stuff is going on.
You're over-exaggerating my ability. So
I'm too far for the olfactory information, but go on.
But that's true, I think, about the human brain. It's a subtler machine than the standards by which it's usually judged up against the ZX spectrum.
Yeah, I think so.
I like that. It was an impassioned defence of the human brain. It's a subtle. It's an art. It's an art. It's more of an art than a science.
It is, absolutely, yes, and a craft. So the Daily Telegraph, that would be back with Paul, I think.
Yes, it is, Simon. Thank you. Royal Mail accused of faking deliveries. So this is exactly, So managers are telling posties to lie about parcels in order to hit targets for bonus payouts. Can you, Adam and Eva? It's just as well, Simon, as you know, that we have Father Christmas to pick up the slack.
Yeah,
this time
absolutely.
Of year.
Yeah, he's probably got a bit more extra work on his hands, hasn't he? One thing I will say about the Royal Mail and delivery services as well, there's just so many of them now, individuals. I mean, there are one or two I still recognise. We have a depot at the end of our road, so I see them trundling down, up and down, not always to deliver to us, but on their way. But, you know, there used to be a thing around this time of year. One of them would ring on the doorbell to hand over the last deliveries and would sort of lurk around, and you were like, yeah, all right, yeah. There's about 30 different individuals come to the door now.
They used to be uniformed as well. You'd have some idea. Now just a guy in a white van turns up at the door.
Or even sometimes in a car, quite often in a hatchback.
And just, you know, presses the doorbell. And you go as they're zooming off down your road at 200 miles an hour with parcels strewn across your driveway.
Kate, my wife, pointed out there's a sort of vehicle, it's probably got a proper name, that's like a sort of pickup truck with a sort of cage on the back, and the council go around and collect sort of bikes that have been abandoned and stuff. Thieves use those as well because they don't look suspicious, and they park outside your house. We caught one this time last year, and they come in, and if they see parcels on the front door, they'll just nick them and chuck them in the back.
Well, this is,
so keep an eye out for those. Yeah. Anything else off there?
Well, we're doing loads of them later, aren't we?
Yeah, there is one here about fears over fresh Reeves tax raid. Can't see any of the words, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, let's have a look at Reaper Reeves later. Still going to make that word.
Exactly.
The Guardian, Nick.
So The Guardian has revealed Thames Water diverted clean-up cash to help pay bonuses. So apparently they intentionally diverted millions of pounds pledged for environmental clean-ups towards other costs, including bonuses and dividends. Whoops. So this isn't great. Apparently it started in as early as 2001 and throughout 2022. I started 2000. I lost confidence on that date. But I like this sentence. Bosses weighed up the political and reputational risks of such a move. Did not that well, apparently. And Thames continued to charge customers for the works, and they don't mean in the American sense of the works, like all of it, like the big full breakfast with all the waffles. They mean this work they were going to do, but they would actually just giving it all to bosses for bonuses. That's what it says here. Of course, caveat as always, it is The Guardian, so it may be something completely different. It may be about football or something. So the story could be completely false.
I mean, I'm no fan of The Guardian, as readers of this channel will know, but they seem to be on the money when it comes to the water issue to some degree. It's one of their issues that I can get behind. I mean, the fact. I wouldn't trust water bosses with water, essentially. No. I mean, they have, all of them seem to, particularly Thames Water, seem to have diverted as much sewer waste into our waterways as they possibly can, unscrupulously, uncaring, and at no risk to themselves and every risk to us.
For balance, I like them. I love water bosses.
My only question, because I'm not willing to do the reading in order to do more penetrating questions, but one question that strikes me is, was water always like this? Because it was only privatised, what was it, under Thatcher? Did it say only, I suppose that's 30 years ago now, but was it always a corrupt industry, or were the opportunities that opened up under the new regime so attractive to rat-like individuals?
I remember when water was water.
Yeah. That's it can't have been that exciting at one time. You would never think it was like a Sopranos-type ruse. Or
was it Leo claimed that it was only because we started measuring it, or was that something else?
There's a lot of money spent on two things for water. One is leaking pipes. A lot of the pipes are Victorian. And I used to work on the systems that detect. So you can, by understanding what the pipe's made of and understanding what the frequency that's generated by the speed of water running through that pipe, you can see peaks,
hum that tune,
and that's where the cracks are. A lot of money gets spent on fixing broken water pipes because of how old they are. But I think the problem now is that a lot of money goes into these companies, a lot of taxpayers' money, and there's a lot of bonuses paid out, and people get very uptight about this. This may have happened in the 70s.
There's a scam. I think we've got just enough time to do the Daily Star very quickly.
Why not? Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is a secure internet connection and a download speed of at least 40 to 100 megabytes per second. Now, I don't have this at home. I'm with Sky, and I get about 25 to 30.
But where is your home?
How dare you advertise rivals? I'm with GBNews Wi-Fi.
Get everything from them.
Exactly.
My home is... I'm not
like a work in the Industrial Revolution. I just paid in tokens from GB News. They're only redeemable here.
Poor old Nick is drinking at the GB News bar on his own again after we're all in the pub. What is this? Why is this a front page? Are they just saying that you need a decent internet connection?
Well, this is the point.
No, because of the streaming, sorry.
Go on, Nick.
I got really excited. It's only because boffins, Simon, fear our beloved internet could go all wonky over Christmas as people stream a whole host of really cracking TV. I don't know what TV that would be, but apparently.
Oh, that probably will happen. My father's going to be on the phone. Oh, my goodness. They live in darkish Norfolk where the internet is intermittent at best. He gets quite upset if it disappears.
I can imagine.
Dad, hang in there. It's going to be all right. Coming up, we have the lovely and fragrant Mrs. Assad, who may be looking for new suitors, and why Reform are going to gallop past the Tories in the next month and will soon be hot on the heels of the RSPB itself. Well, we'll see you after the break.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over 220 pounds, which
wow.
I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, still joined by Paul Cox and Nick Dixon. So, Paul, we have Asma Assad, and she is shocked, I tell you, to discover what the mild-mannered ophthalmologist she married back in 2000 has been up to in the meantime. She's now suing for divorce, according to The Sun.
Great stuff. Yeah, The Sun's headline, Roses Thorns weedy dictator, Assad's Brit-born Desert Rose wife, files for divorce and wants to return to UK after couple exiled. So this is the British-born wife of disposed Syrian tyrant Bashar al-Assad, as we all know, and his wife has now filed for divorce. The 49-year-old and her husband are held up in Moscow after being forced into exile, as we all know.
But he has got decent funds with him, by the look of it. 270 kilograms of gold, £1.6 billion worth of cash.
That's significant, isn't it? But she's saying she's dissatisfied, or sources are saying she's dissatisfied with her life under the guard of Putin's regime, which I can imagine is pretty tricky. And you know what? So much for in sickness and in health, Nick. But
well, that's what it is, Paul. When you're, you know, they're there for the brutal, murderous dictatorship. As soon as you want to launch a small business in Russia, they're like, no, don't want to be there for the hard graft. But to be very, that's what I would normally say. But to be very fair, she is actually very ill. It's rumoured, and I don't know if that's confirmed. So I don't want to be too mean about it.
Do you know what?
Yes, but I don't know if it's official, so maybe I shouldn't say. It was in one of the articles, but not.
Oh, OK. That is slightly different. I mean, I suppose it's difficult, isn't it? In a way, once you're in, aren't you? It is quite. Do you know what I mean? With a marriage to a dictator,
yeah.
It is quite odd because she genuinely did meet him in London, and he genuinely was a mild-mannered ophthalmologist. He was studying. Yeah. His brother, his older brother, was the brutal dictator in waiting, and then he dies. It's a bit
like The Godfather, really.
Well, he had to step up. Yeah, to Sonny's position. Yeah, that's right.
He was like Michael. I'm saying he's Michael. He's just like the war hero. I don't get involved in the business.
Sonny was the one who was going to be, wasn't he? I can't remember who was going to have been the older brother.
James Caan. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, you're right. Or it's a bit more sitcom than that, I think, in a way. You know, he's kind of. You can imagine the music as he gets.
It's a funny, brutal dictatorship.
I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come back to Damascus. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
The other thing, of course, is you might as well come back to Britain. We are harbouring lots of sort of. We got ex-Hamas leader, of course, living just outside
Plus,
London.
she is very glamorous. I mean, she wowed and wooed her way across Europe while he was doing the dirty work.
Yeah, you've got to, haven't you? I mean,
yeah, and if she was making jokes about it, saying she was the real dictator in the family, and like apparently at one point that was considered like a fun, soft article before everyone realised the scale of the horror.
Yeah. It's a good question whether you would live... Also, I mean, obviously she had absolute power and luxury in Syria, but always a bit of fear, I would think, whereas in Putin's Russia, presumably they'll be well looked after, but things will just get a bit dull.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many ruples you'd need to live a good life there, but I just don't see it being fun in exile.
No, it's true. Reform... They should have one island just set aside for exile dictators. It would be great.
Well, I think Epstein's one's going for it.
Great reality show as well.
Celebrity Street. What was that?
Stella Street or something.
Stella Street, yeah. Reform membership set to overtake Tories now, Nick, though some way still to go to catch up with the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, let alone the National Trust.
Interesting.
They're the biggest.
Didn't see you going in that direction yet. Reform UK is set to have more members than Tories within a month. So the Tories have 131,680. Reform are at 120,549. That's 11,131. I'm just doing all this in my head.
Ping.
But I'm like short circuit. I was speed of the internet. I'm reading most of that out. But yes, they've got younger members. They're smashing it. We all know this. The Tories have become somewhat irrelevant, and they got a lot of trouble with the Boris wave. And, I said Nigel Farage would be Prime Minister in 2029. Well, I was one of the first people to say it. When I said it, I didn't really know how it could happen. I thought I would just make one of my silly prediction tweets. But now it seems almost inevitable, doesn't it? They've got Nick Candy, they've got Elon Musk, they've got, the Tories perhaps don't have the strongest leader, and they've obviously got the disastrous immigration record. So it is reform's time. I mean, I don't 100% trust them yet. I really like Rupert Lowe. I'm not sure about Zia Yusuf, don't know much about him, but they've definitely got the momentum, they've got the younger vote, and I think...
We've got to find a new word for momentum, because that was, of course, tainted by Corbyn association.
Yes.
But yeah, they've got the oomph.
Yeah. I would say now that reform is British politics. Whenever you have a discussion, with friends or family or whatever, reform is on the tip of everyone's tongue when we start talking. Two things they talk about: how poorly Keir Starmer and Labour are doing, and, statistically, a lot of people voted for them, and the flip side to that is how big reform could become. There's this huge void in British politics that's just waiting to be filled.
Well, I suppose one big question, Farage has got I think definitely does have number 10 in his sights now, and can see that they could go all the way, but he is trying to steer them a fairly steady course, and then there are others who want them to become almost borderline identitarian, to sort of like really, and then they would probably then have no chance of becoming the governing party, but they might be able to hold the Tories to account.
Nick and I have had this discussion a few times, actually, and I think reform need to become all things to all men, and it's how they go about doing that. It's very difficult. Farage knows that he's probably got to play within the rules of the game. It's not like Trump and the Republican Party, where you can effectively change the rules of American politics. It's going to be very difficult to change the rules of British politics, and as a result...
Can I just say, to me, this thing about being too much to the right and all that is a myth. To me, the ruling elite is radically out of touch with the people on a range of issues, and has been for decades. Immigration being an obvious one, but you can look at anything, the death penalty, you look at a range of issues. And there's a certain Overton window within Westminster that keeps you within that. But that's not representative of the people. So to me, the only question is, how brave are you to represent the people rather than Westminster? Not how far right or left you are, but do you dare to be in line with the British people?
And especially now that new media is is also outside of that Overton window, which was patrolled by the BBC and so on for a very long time. Yeah. To no one's great surprise, Paul, at least not on this channel, Reaper Reeves's budget has put the fear of God into the economy and stopped it dead in its tracks.
Absolutely. Rachel Reeves faces nightmare as economic growth downgraded and disposable income freezes. Now, this comes as GDP sits stagnant at 0.1%, down from its forecast of 0.1%. So it hasn't taken a great tumble.
So it was going to be such a great Christmas.
But essentially, this, and by the way, what's really important is the time frame of this. So this is quarter 3, which is July to September.
Yeah.
There's been absolute stagnation, whereas previous quarter 2, April to June, our growth was at 1.4%. And the reason that is so important is because Labour's strategy has been entirely to blame the previous government.
Yeah.
And you know what? Who can blame them? They weren't exactly brilliant. However, when it comes to the economy, they actually handed over something that wasn't in complete disrepair. It was actually in the ascendancy, albeit small percentages, but in the ascendancy nonetheless. And now they've taken that 1.4% and driven it into the ground.
Still baffling to me, to be honest, Nick, that they called the election when they did. I think a lot of people could see that the economy was probably likely to improve in the next...
Richie, that was bizarre, But one thing I don't understand is, I mean, we're talking about how much of a nightmare this budget is. Why do people expect us to be this dynamic country that's growing at the moment when everything else is collapsing? You know, you have a low trust society, constant bureaucracy, constant legal nonsense. No one can buy a house, so there's no incentive. The sort of British majority are told they're evil all the time. You know, doesn't it seem unlikely to you that we'd be this economic superpower on the back of a collapsing country?
We have a few good...
We've got the financial sector.
The financial sector is good. There's things like biotech we're quite strong in. There's some quite high-tech stuff. British aerospace, of course, and weapons sector, things like that. It's the middle ground, isn't it? It's industry, it's manufacturing, those kind of things. And as people have said, the drift of the last 20 or 30 years worldwide has been that the digital economies are the ones that grow. You know, all the massive Silicon Valley economies now, there are 5 or 6 companies that are worth more than $1 trillion, $2 trillion. None of that seems to be happening in Europe either, let alone in Britain. And things that we used to be quite good at, like just actually sort of, you know, banging nails into things, you know, you just cannot make any money doing that anymore.
Previous governments have been negligent on this front. They have sold us down the river to China, and China have sold it back to us at twice the price.
Absolutely correct. Well, we have another quarter in the bag still to come. 2022 is here again as J.K. Rowling takes on Nicola Sturgeon and the American Depression-era novel that the Welsh school kids just can't quite cope with. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly gloomy during the next 24 hours, a lot of low cloud, drizzle and some hill fog too. But it's also going to be very mild, certainly as far as Christmas Eve and Christmas Day go. We've had this warm front moving in from the west through the day. That's brought the cloud, it's brought some outbreaks of rain, and those outbreaks of rain are continuing to work their way east across the UK. And with a lot of cloud overnight, as well as this mild wind direction, it's going to be a case of temperatures rising through the night and not falling, so 9 to 12 Celsius first thing Christmas Eve. It's going to be grey and misty outside first thing as well. A lot of hill fog in the west with some patchy drizzle and some more persistent rain affecting western Scotland in particular, along with a strengthening wind. 12, perhaps even 13 Celsius though during Christmas Eve morning. Remarkably mild for the time of year. If there is any brightness to be had, it'll be eastern Scotland, eastern England, perhaps parts of the Midlands and the South East, as well as eastern parts of Northern Ireland. But any brighter intrudes will be short-lived. Most places will see extensive cloud cover. That cloud will be covering the hills and coasts in the west, so grey, misty conditions and some drizzle here and there. But by the afternoon, actually, much of the south will be dry, away from hills and coasts in the west. And actually, with highs of 12 or 13 Celsius and lighter winds in the south, it won't feel too unpleasant. But further north, the winds are going to strengthen. And it's going to be a windy start to Christmas Day across northwest Scotland in particular, with some wet weather around. Elsewhere across the country, most places on Christmas Day will be dry, albeit rather cloudy again, and once more, very mild. Temperatures gradually decrease during Boxing Day and into the weekend, but it stays mostly dry.
I'm I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Excuse me, we're going to have another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. Before we go any further, the Daily Telegraph, Royal Mail accused of faking deliveries. The Times, fifth of our forces cannot be relied on to fight. The Daily Mirror, honour the brave. The Daily Mail, King's message of national healing. The Sun, good health, Your Majesty. And finally, the Daily Star, boffins warn of a techno meltdown on festive big day. So, the Kemi Badenoch thinks Elon Musk giving Farage £100 million would be counterproductive, Nick, and I have to say I agree. I can think of many more effective ways that sort of sum could be deployed.
Interesting, on your shed.
Move the needle a bit, yeah.
Yeah, OK, well, it's Musk would be trying to buy UK politics with reform donations, suggests Badenoch. And you sort of wonder what would happen if the Tories had been offered this money. Would it be different? Because she has gone over to America, clearly trying to get people like Musk on side. He's chosen reform. He actually liked Sunak because he was had a tech bro vibe. But he obviously thinks Nigel Farage has got the name, he's got the momentum until we have a new word. And it's not with the Tories. And although I'm sure she has a lot of integrity and she says, you know, maybe it's not a good idea, her election limit was £15,000. She also says she doesn't think Musk is actually going to give the money. Yeah. And she's claiming that Farage is kind of says things that aren't true. But the fact remains that it's not good for the Tories that Musk is enthusiastic about reform and not them. They can't get over the Boris wave of immigration. They've lost their relevance. And one other thing I'd just quickly add is that Kemi talks about not making promises that she can't deliver and so on. Yeah. And all that is fine, but at some point she has to do some politics. She's saying the election's ages away, I don't want to make promises I can't deliver. It's like, right, but you're being completely destroyed by this new party, so you have to do something.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because Keir Starmer didn't really deliver on many promises or whatever at the time, but that was when the Tories were in power and were gradually falling apart, deteriorating in front of our eyes. That isn't Kemi's big worry at the moment, Labour, is it? It is reform, as you say.
Of course it is.
And she is right in a way saying, well, there's a limit to how much he can spend that £100 million. It's not America where you just can't buy sort of huge blocks of media time or whatever, but it nevertheless gives the impression that they are the coming man.
Well, the fear is palpable, and so it should be. I think, you know, I'm unsure about foreign investment in UK politics, but one thing I am sure about is upsetting this cart of rotten apples and changing the status quo as we find it now politically. And if that means that we need investment in new parties like Reform, then that's what we need to do. Because ultimately, someone like Nigel Farage and Reform are going to need investment in order to achieve the goals that they've set out. And if he doesn't, maybe someone else will. But if no one does, we end up with Labour and Conservatives again.
That's true. And meanwhile, in the independent America are already gearing up for some proper good old-fashioned neo-colonialism in Central America.
Yeah, this is why we voted Trump. We didn't. But Trump threatens to retake Panama Canal in Truth Social Post. So obviously this is President Donald Trump's taken to his own social media platform like he would, and he wants to retake the Panama Canal, accusing Panama of charging exorbitant prices for American vessels. Now, unbeknownst to me, and it might be, I'm not sure it was to you, Simon, it was once owned because it was largely funded and built by the US and once owned. And I think it was Jimmy Carter that signed a treaty in '77, which meant by the end of the 20th century, i.e. 1999, it would be handed over to Panama. Since then, they've been charging American vessels to go through. And Trump is now saying this is impeding his ability to get good prices to pass things through there. And of course, no one's going to go around. Is it the Cape of Good Hope?
Cape Horn.
Cape Horn. That's South Africa, isn't it? So
The Drake Passage, the most
yes.
traitorous seas in the world.
Yeah, there's that
yes.
square. I remember reading it in the books.
I think
up.
it is. I mean, I don't know the rights and wrongs of it entirely, but it does seem that there might be some justification if there was an implication in the treaty. We will now hand it over to you, but you won't screw us down. I mean, that wouldn't be unreasonable, would it?
I don't know. There's three things I like to hear. One was Paul explaining how centuries work just a second ago. Two is Trump's Truth Social post where he said, "Welcome to the United States Canal," because he's totally trolling and putting his flag. There was a US flag on the canal. He's like, "We've already got it." The other was on Sky News, actually. They had a sentence in their article. "It's not clear how Mr. Trump would go about reasserting US control over the canal." I just find that so funny. Like, how is Trump going to win back this canal?
This is what we've got to look forward to, though. This is quite entertaining.
I like him. It's a good deal. A huge rush of nostalgia for me now, Nick, as J.K. Rowling gets stuck into Nicola Sturgeon in The Telegraph.
Oh, yeah, Sturgeon. It's J.K. Rowling leads feminist backlash against Sturgeon for rewriting history over gender self-ID row. So it was the gender bill, one of Sturgeon's bills that she had, not a good one. And she put this thing, she said, things have become so toxic and entrenched. She said that there were forces that muscled into the debate. And Rowling objects to these forces. She's saying, well, who are these forces? Why don't you name them? Because she thinks she means Rowling and et al. So, and she says, oh, she just needs this for her ego to believe that she had this adversary, a worthy adversary, rather than just members of the public who don't want cross-dressing men running rape crisis centres, in Rowling's words. But one thing that's really interesting is that Sturgeon claims that the debate over gay marriage would have been much more toxic, divisive and unpleasant had it taken place today. So her claim is to try and sort of place it within a progressive narrative that, oh, I'm just trying to be progressive. Gay marriage, you guys would have objected to that. But of course, these feminists would not have objected to that.
No, I can't. They're completely wrong-headed. They're upside down because, as you say, most of the support for trans was initially came out of the sort of liberal left anyway, and they're the people who then turned on it. It was realised they'd gone too far. But I've seen something today, I wish I could remember who it was, where they were saying the hostility and prejudice that trans people are facing now is exactly what was faced by the Jews. I mean, presumably, I mean, this is incredible that you would draw any equivalence there. It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah. But they both have to frame it in terms of being the most progressive. So the TERFs have to say this is misogynist, and Sturgeon has to say, well, you're the same type of people that would have opposed gay marriage. So they both have to frame it like we're the more progressive ones. But really, it's a civil war in feminism, I would claim.
I absolutely agree with you. But I have to say also, I think an awful lot of people, ordinary people, just didn't quite realise quite how crazy the legislation was getting, and the idea that you could just change your sex with 5 minutes of documentation and start to compete in women's sports.
And be in a prison.
You know, and be in a prison. As soon as people understood what the implications were, they spoke up. It was an attempt to get it in under the radar, basically, wasn't it?
I've always found it fascinating. Nicola Sturgeon is the epitome of a one-policy politician. She has never been held to account on her failing to deliver that policy being Scottish independence. And that's the things that she should be measured on. This is a complete distraction from her abject failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one bites the literary dust bowl in Wales, Paul, as Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men is cast out of curriculum paradise and into the Cannery Road.
Wow, that's incredible.
Unbelievable.
That's extraordinary.
Great stuff from just the sort of stuff we've come to expect, Simon, to be fair. Of Mice and Men taken off Welsh GCSE list for being psychologically damaging. So this is, for those who aren't aware, this is obviously the John Steinbeck book from 1937, and it focuses on the friendship of two unemployed men as they try and find work in the Great Depression. But it's been removed from classrooms due to its racism, essentially. It's of its time. Now, there are many books that could replace this. Of course there are. But what I'm keen to understand is why we keep trying to protect children from an intellectual challenge. So that you can replace it with something much more palatable that doesn't have any of the language that was used in 1937. But this is a great book that stands the test of time. So I still think it's something that children in Wales and England and Scotland could benefit from.
I suppose the argument is there are an awful lot of great books, and they don't all... And the thing about Of Mice and Men, which I've not read, incidentally, but I have seen the film, and the thing about it is the racism is very incidental. It's not about racism. It's not like Huckleberry Finn, which was like about the relationship between a young white boy and a freed slave or an escaped slave. And there's it's just a slightly, black figures in it are just treated as being evidently slightly less intellectual and, slightly less human than whites without that really being addressed. So maybe it isn't an appropriate text.
I genuinely believe it's not children that are sensitive, it's the teachers.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But is it harmful? I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't believe it is. I think it's not harmful, it's a book. But they talk about it could be awkward for discussion in class, but surely any number of issues could be awkward. And you could argue that the remaining 99% of the curriculum that paints white British people as evil might be a bit awkward for them. And that's actually history, not just literature.
True. Of Mice and Men, incidentally, there's a far more damaging portrait of a mentally retarded man, essentially, which is,
strong, though. Strong as an ox.
Yeah. Anyway, still to come. It's true. He strangles puppies. He doesn't mean to. Sweat sampling tech comes to the aid of the force. And another reason why you should never skip Steak Day. That's all coming up on Headliners, only on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see an east-west split weather-wise across southern parts of Europe over the next few days. Mostly fine in the west, more unsettled further east. Could see a few showers on Christmas Eve across the Canaries, but for much of Iberia, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around here. And then we run into more unsettled conditions across southeastern parts of Europe. Some wind, some rain, even some hill snow in places. And that east-west split continues as we go through the Christmas period. Further unsettled weather to come in the east, generally fine the further west you are.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. This is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Headliners for the wacky last quarter. Meanwhile, Nick, we have jurors now unable to even hear... notice, yes, we are doing this one. Even unable to hear evidence of a crime without experiencing PTSD, possibly because they weren't exposed to realist fiction as children.
Very funny callback. But, yeah, when you said wacky, you perhaps weren't expecting this one because it's not that wacky. It's not that Christmassy. It's jurors risk trauma from gruesome evidence as mock trial reveals nearly half met threshold for PTSD symptoms. So it makes sense. I mean, they studied 180 people. They essentially found if you had to look, you get intrusive thoughts and stress, but particularly bad if you had to actually look at the evidence. It rose to 44% from 11%. So obviously, if you have to see lots of gruesome stuff of people's skulls being bashed in and stuff, it's not great. And I suppose our whole society is coping with how to adjust to different times. In the past, people just used to expect things to be grim and awful. And now we're going, I'm not sure I want to be on the jury and get PTSD.
I think it's quite interesting. I have a friend who's a judge now. He was a criminal barrister for a number of years. And every case he told me, you know, would have some horrific detail. And you think... I think they're quite selective, the ones that make it into the newspapers. Every so often, every, 5 years, there's one where people have abused the child so badly with cigarettes and so on, you kind of, turn away from it. But I think there's an awful lot of that stuff.
Yeah, close family members. I've never done jury service, actually. That's just put the nail in that coffin, isn't it? But... close family members that both have had absolutely harrowing cases. I know you're not supposed to talk about them, but they spoke about them after the event. And, you know, this trouble, there's a lot of depravity out there. So once you know this stuff, you can't unknow it. So perhaps a little bit of therapy might help.
I think so, or possibly drugs. Anyway, Telegraph has a piece that I should really not characterise as won't someone think of the mill owners and workhouse proprietors, Nick? But...
Well, it's a bit like that. So it's the struggle to get lazy Britons to follow skilled migrants into work. This headline designed to infuriate me and many of our viewers. And this actually comes from Zhu Ping Chan. And you sort of think, I mean, I don't know where Zhu Ping Chan is from because I couldn't research it, but let's say they're Chinese. Could I go to China and say stuff like that? Would I probably disappear for quite a few months? But anyway, they don't write the headlines, of course, the journalists. This was a very infuriating article because it says how, Brits are lazy and there's this guy, Butcher, who owns all these care homes. Not a particularly sympathetic figure. A bloke called Butcher who owns all the care homes.
There's something in the genes, isn't there?
And he's saying Brits are lazy. But when you really drill down, you find actually, unskilled migrants cost us loads of money. Even the skilled migrants don't contribute as much as working UK adults who contribute more in direct and indirect taxes. And when you break this stuff down, there's a great channel called Academic Agent. He did this video, The Hidden Cost of Low-Wage Immigrant Labour, and he broke it all down. We give people about $17,000 per person. So essentially, in order to maintain these artificially low prices, for example, in coffee shops, and it's similar to care homes, you're paying people, and then they're living in, social housing with, illegally subletting and all these things they do to keep this going. What we need to incentivise people to give companies more money to hire British workers and pay them more.
Yeah, I'm afraid, it does seem like the inescapable conclusion is half the country is a drain on the other half.
Yes, but people need to be incentivised to work. You've got far too many benefits, work's not paying enough, and we brought in everyone from the whole world to undercut people, and then that's subsidised effectively by the government. And they take services, which makes them a net loss as well.
Terrible Ponzi scheme. Never mind, we move on to some interesting technology now in the mirror pool for those of us tempted to drink our way through Christmas. A last-minute stocking filler, perhaps, for an alcoholic spouse who's in deep denial.
Yeah, good luck trying that. Nearly 4,000 offenders wearing alcohol tags to stop them drinking over Christmas. So this is offenders who commit alcohol-driven crimes can be ordered to wear a tag which takes a sample of their sweat every 30 minutes and alerts the probation service if alcohol is detected.
Extraordinary.
Now, at this point in the article and on the journey of this article, it feels as if everything's very reasonable. However, the article goes on, and this is in the Mirror, and this is perhaps why, to say that our Prisons Minister, which is a guy called James Timpson, sees this as potentially a way of solving the prison issue.
Right.
And this is where I depart from it slightly, because I think if you just tag criminals up, you still just end up with criminals on the street and not in prison.
If you don't actually castrate them, it's pointless. Nick, we've got one last story. This is another study which has unearthed yet another reason to be deeply suspicious of all January masochism themes, but especially veganuary.
Oh, yeah, and it comes from The Guardian, so it's vegan propaganda. Meat eaters more likely to be disgusted by meat after taking part in veganuary, study reveals. Although we don't know how many people are disgusted by veganuary. We need to get those figures as well. Basically, they get used to not eating meat and then they become disgusted by it. Yeah, I mean, Lewis Schaefer would be appalled by this story. He has a tag that goes off if he eats carbs. But, Paul, anything on this before we end? I don't want to hog it.
I think we should extend these theme months to political persuasions. Perhaps we should live like Venezuelan socialists for a month in January.
I just want to know, I mean, I suppose I could read the whole article. Are they disgusted by uncooked meat or cooked? Most people are disgusted by uncooked meat. That's why we invented cooking.
Yes, except Lewis.
It solves the whole issue.
I love your sense. I suppose I could just read the article. That would solve so much.
The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Telegraph. Royal Mail accused of faking deliveries. The Times. Fifth Forces can't be relied upon to fight. The Daily Mirror. Honour the brave. The Daily Mail. King's message of national healing. The Sun. Good health, Your Majesty. And finally, the Daily Star. Boffins warn of a techno meltdown on festive big day. Veganuary didn't make the front pages, but the warnings were there. That's it for tonight's show. Thanks to my guests, Paul and Nick. There's no headliners tomorrow night. Cressida Wenton will be here on Christmas Day at 11 p.m, joined by Paul and Lewis Schaefer. If you're watching at 5 a.m, they stay tuned for breakfast. If that's it for your evening, thank you very much for spending it with us. And on behalf of myself and Paul and Nick, I hope you have a very peaceful Christmas. Thank you very much.
And listen to our podcast.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly gloomy during the next 24 hours, a lot of low cloud, drizzle and some hill fog too. But it's also going to be very mild, certainly as far as Christmas Eve and Christmas Day go. We've had this warm front moving in from the west through the day. That's brought the cloud, it's brought some outbreaks of rain, and those outbreaks of rain are continuing to work their way east across the UK. And with a lot of cloud overnight, as well as this mild wind direction, it's going to be a case of temperatures rising through the night and not falling, so 9 to 12 Celsius first thing Christmas Eve. It's going to be grey and misty outside first thing as well. A lot of hill fog in the west with some patchy drizzle and some more persistent rain affecting western Scotland in particular, along with a strengthening wind. 12, perhaps even 13 Celsius, though, during Christmas Eve morning. Remarkably mild for the time of year. If there is any brightness to be had, it'll be eastern Scotland, eastern England, perhaps parts of the Midlands and the South East, as well as eastern parts of Northern Ireland. But any brighter intrudes will be short-lived. Most places will see extensive cloud cover. That cloud will be covering the hills and coasts in the west, so grey, misty conditions and some drizzle here and there. But by the afternoon, actually, much of the south will be dry, away from hills and coasts in the west. And actually, with highs of 12 or 13 Celsius and lighter winds in the south, it won't feel too unpleasant. But further north, the winds are going to strengthen. And it's going to be a windy start to Christmas Day across northwest Scotland in particular, with some wet weather around. Elsewhere across the country, most places on Christmas Day will be dry, albeit rather cloudy again, and once more, very mild. Temperatures gradually decrease during Boxing Day and into the weekend, but it stays mostly dry.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation. You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you and a Merry Christmas. It's 7 p.m. and I'm Martin Dormy, standing in for the big man, Nigel Farage, on Farage tonight on our show. Peter Mandelson moves in on Nigel Farage. Britain's new ambassador to the United States admits that he might need the reform leader's charms and help. And 22 councils, including those with newly elected Labour MPs, are now facing rebellions from their town hall leaders. I'll be speaking to one of the directors of a group spearheading this rural revolt. And 2 more Saracens head pubs are facing legal action from a convicted jihadist terrorist over signs that he deems as racist. And that's all on tonight's show. But first, here's your news headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. These are your headlines at 7 o'clock. The suspect accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has pleaded not guilty. Luigi Mangione is facing 11 charges, including first-degree murder and terrorism. If convicted, the 26-year-old could face life in prison without parole. In addition to the state's case, a federal case against Mangione is running concurrently. One of the charges, murder through use of a firearm, would make him eligible for the death penalty if he's convicted. However, his defence attorneys called the situation highly unusual, noting conflicting theories between the state and federal cases. Staying in the US, Matt Gaetz, who was previously Donald Trump's nominee for US Attorney General, paid for sex and drugs while in office, according to a report. A US House Ethics Committee's report into Mr. Gaetz has found substantial evidence he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office. It says the former Florida congressman violated multiple state laws. However, Gaetz denies wrongdoing and says the people investigating me hated me. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is heading abroad again over the new year after drawing criticism about his frequent overseas trips to various summits. The Prime Minister is enjoying his first Christmas in the role, and according to Number 10, he will spend time with his family over the coming days. However, instead of doing so at Downing Street or at their family home, the Starmers will head to the Grace and Favour country residence of Chequers in Buckinghamshire. After spending Christmas Day there, the Prime Minister and his family are going to head overseas. Germany's right-wing Alternative for Deutschland party is holding a rally in front of Magdeburg Cathedral near the scene of the Christmas market attack that killed 5 people and injured over 200. Police have arrested a 50-year-old Saudi doctor identified by local media as Talib A, who had lived in Germany since 2006. AfD is the second strongest party at present, polling at about 18 to 20% of the vote, or 10 to 15 points behind the centre-right Christian Democratic Union and its Bavarian sister party. And King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel